Okay, Mikkal, I will talk in Italian. So, per chi si fosse connesso ora, Mikkal è l'autore di questo splendido libro che potete vedere, Jung e lo sciamanesimo è il suo titolo, dall'anima fra la psicanalisi e lo sciamanesimo. È un libro pubblicato dalle edizioni Amrita ed è veramente un libro che consiglio a tutti gli accademici, a tutti coloro che studiano, lavorano nell'ambito dell'antropologia e della psicologia, perché è un libro ponte, lo definisco tale perché è in grado di connettere quelli che sono gli stati non ordinari di coscienza e la psicologia jungiana, e lo fa in un modo impeccabile. Quindi siamo riuniti qui per fare un'intervista a Michael Smith che ci concede, ci ha concesso, e questa è un'esperienza fantastica perché di solito non lo fa. La prima domanda è che cos'è lo sciamanismo? Partiamo con qualcosa di ampio raggio e come lo sciamanismo può essere connesso alla psicologia jungiana.
Good question. Well, Jungian psychology, when Carl Jung developed his analytical psychology from about 1919 on, it was a very different world than today. Okay. And at that time, until he died in 1961, the world, the social world, was very conventional. Everybody was not living their true self for the most part. Just a few people, artists, philosophers, dancers, maybe. Mm-hmm. But Jung suddenly encourages us all to become more creative and to express our voice. So he encouraged us to bring what's inside of us out into the world and express it. Also, not just to bring out the socially adapted nice parts of ourselves, but also the secret parts of ourselves that no one was really sharing, except for poets and artists, musicians, dancers, this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We could say that Jung was encouraging us to live like artists or to live like shamans. So this was very new. At some point in Italy, Roberto Assagioli, I don't know how to say it. Developed similar ideas, and of course he was also influenced by Jung, and they met and they talked, but still it wasn't until the 1960s that Jungian analysis really took to the public, and people started becoming familiar with it. Yeah. So Jung called this process of self-development and expression individuation. And so this element of individuation is related to Jung's own daimon or daimonion, or genius, as the Romans called it, the personal genius. It's like a guardian spirit. And Jung's daimonion, it spoke to him through dreams, through synchronicities, through visions, and through active imagination, which is very similar to shamanism, where you take a journey and you travel into the other world, or the unconscious for Jung, and you dialogue with the archetypal figures or the spiritual figures there. So Jung built his whole life and work on these ideas. And he considered himself, in his own words, a medicine man for his time. And he was very concerned about the earth. Maybe he built a little tower on Lake Bollingen near Zurich, where he lived close to the earth. He cooked over an open fire. There was no electricity or running water. And inside, he painted his dreams on the walls and the ceilings. And he carved them in stone. And he said when he's at his place in Bolingen, his little stone hut, he's in his true life, the midst of his true life. Most of his mature work, psychologically, grew out of his time alone at Bolingen. He said, at times I feel like I'm part of the wind and the waves, and could hear the whispering spirits and the ancestors. Yeah. So he cooked his own meals, and he tried to live simply like an indigenous person. And he sought out in his travels medicine men in Algoni, in Morocco, in North America, in the American Southwest, a Navajo medicine man called Mountain Lake. And he wanted to compare his views with theirs. And he found great similarity. This one medicine man, a Pueblo medicine man, he asked, how do you see the white man? He says, well, look at his eyes. They're always searching for something. They're always wanting something. We don't know what they want. We think they are crazy. Loco. Yeah. And Jung says, why do you think this is true? And the medicine man said, because they think with their heads. And Jung said, of course, what do you think with? And he pointed here to his heart. And this was a revelation to Jung. He realized that the Amerindian heart path was the path of individuation, but the medicine man made it so simple and concrete. It's right here that you want to live from, right there. So my own way is to live from the heart, and Jung called that individuation. But this does not mean living from your emotions. Your emotions can be very dramatic, they can be very selfish, they can be destructive. But for the Amerindians, the heart is the spiritual center of the person. It integrates the mind, the body, the instincts, the intuition. And so it's a more integral or integrated way to live. And the daimon, or the guardian spirit, it lives here in your heart. And you can communicate with it through a shamanic journey, but also you can just listen to its feelings. It's guiding you by feelings, not emotions, feelings. Because the heart, it knows what's right or what's wrong for you. Yeah, and it knows when you are following your daimon and when you are not. And if you are not following this, you will not be happy or fulfilled. You will instead follow whatever is popular, whatever the people think you should do. These are exactly Jung's beliefs and the medicine man, Okwuye Biano, or Mountain Lake's beliefs. The same. They're the same. They just speak different languages, but deep down it's the same. You know, Chinese Taoism evolved out of shamanism, and it's a very shamanistic philosophy. There are some things that are always changing in life. There are up cycles and down cycles. Nobody can change that fact. Not the most powerful shaman in the world. No, because it's archetypal or universal structure that life depends upon. And in Taoism, the yang and the yin, they are always together. And if you try to separate them too much, you have problems. You will have problems anyway. The Taoist shamanic wisdom is to move with the up and the down cycle. So if you have a difficult time, maybe you just lay low and wait for the time to shift and go up. So the staying in balance is riding with the down cycle and the up cycle and accepting it as the way of life. Now, Jung was a Taoist. He followed the I Ching, he used it. His psychology is deeply Taoist, in a sense. which is another way to say it's deeply shamanic. So in Taoism, you hold the opposites together. Everything has its place. Yeah. So Jung's theory of archetypes follow this principle, this Taoistic principle. So archetype and countertype, they go together. The opposites. For example, people marry their opposites often. They marry somebody that's quite different. Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about is very shamanic too. I'm just trying to show how things were for Jung, and I will show how things are for shamanism. Because in shamanism also we want to unite the masculine and the feminine, the spirit and nature, and the inside and the out, like alchemy, and the above and the below. The opposites must be held together to be in balance. Yeah. So to live from your heart also means you try to hold all of life together. It's not easy to do this. Even if it sounds so clear, so simple, it's not. Except that a lot of indigenous peoples, at least they're shamans, they can do it naturally. It's easier, you might say, because the culture supports that way of living. Like Amerindians, they have, which, you know, I live in North America, and I live right off the Ojibwe and Potawatomi tribal lands. I'm surrounded by indigenous peoples. They are infected by modern civilization, but I know the practices that are ancient that help people keep in balance from them. And it's a sweat lodge, a peace pipe, a monthly moon ceremony called the Longhouse. And it's a place where community comes together and people can share their dreams, their visions, their suffering, and find spiritual resources to help them face that and overcome the difficulties. So they live, let me say it different. The old traditions, they have these rituals or ceremonies that honor the inner life and the outer life as one, and that allow them to dream and to share their dreams, to understand their dreams, to have vision quests, to get their power animal or spirit guide or daimon. The whole social structure supports the basically shamanic way of living. And this is true in Mexico, where I also work and teach, and in Peru, where I also work and teach, and in South Africa, where I also work and teach. But now for Jung, he has something similar. He has dream analysis or dream work, working with your dreams, writing your dreams down, painting pictures of the images. He has active imagination, which is just like the shamanic journey. You just don't use the drum, but he has a way for us to go in and connect with whatever is coming up from the unconscious or the collective unconscious or the spirit world. And community is also important for Jungians. They're individualists, but they know the power of coming together and supporting each other. It's very important to them too. And they know the power of ritual. So they're often encouraging people to do little rituals or to engage in collective rituals to help them heal themselves and get in better balance. And so for me, these are like two traditions or lineages that are very closely woven together. The shamanic and Jungian psychology.
Ok, grazie Mikkal.
Thank you, Mikkal.
Allora, passate in rassegna una domanda.
We have just another question.
Ma allora, intanto, con che genere di pazienti lavori shamanicamente? Perché ricordiamo che Mikkal è un sciamano Cherokee e un analista jungiano, per cui connette questi due aspetti in unica persona.
So, Mikkal, another question, please. What kind of patient do you work with from a shamanic point of view?
Okay. So with this background, I call my work psycho-shamanic, but I have people who come to me because I'm a psychologist, and I have people come to me because I'm a shamanic healer. I work in that style. But I noticed my psychology patients, they can be people who have post-traumatic stress or depression, and they just want to feel better. If I ask them what kind of life do they want, they usually don't know. They just want to stop suffering. But for them too, my shamanic perspective and way of life is communicated without the language and the symbols to them. Yeah, I don't take them into a sweat lodge or do sacred mushrooms or anything like that with them. The other type, but the other type is coming to me because of an interest in shamanism or in Jungian psychology. Okay, so what happens is I always am interested in the core question, what kind of life do you want? And I want the individual to tell me in precise detail the kind of life they want to live, what kind of habits, rituals, what kind of house they want, what kind of work they want, what kind of love relationship. I want to know the colors they love, the textures, the objects they want to surround themselves with. I want to know what they want. And so I help them express this and tell me. And then I help them through either talking or through ceremony to dissolve those obstacles, so that all is left is the true self, and they are free to create the life they want in a heart open and earth honoring way. The third thing is spiritual emergencies, which are crises. They look like mental psychoses. People have been in hospitals, or the psychiatrists have misdiagnosed them, and maybe it's a shamanic awakening, maybe it's a kundalini awakening, but they need help with that. And this is my biggest specialty, and I work with people from all over the world. They travel here to Crow's Nest, or they work with me on Skype or something, and I help them sort through and find how to complete their initiation and get off the medications. First of all, the patient, usually they have talked to me beforehand, or there's been some conversation beforehand, so I know the problem in a way. And then I call in the spirits, and you might say I plug into a greater intelligence and energy source, and then the guidance comes through me, maybe through what I say or what I do or how I touch them or something, or what I suggest. Or sometimes the spirit will talk to them directly through me. They use my mouth. Many of my ceremonies are in community context too, so the community supports and their conversations they have with different members of the community. That's a very important part of the healing process and transformation process.
Che cos'è questo sacred breathwork? A che cosa serve? Qual è la sua funzione?
Okay, so sacred breathwork is a form of connected breathing with powerful music in a very safe community context. There's powerful music that supports it. There's no chemicals, no drugs, and it involves journeying, but we surrender to what I would call the guardian spirit, the inner healer, or as Stan Groff called it, and I learned it initially from him, the holotropic principle of moving towards wholeness. So we surrender to that in sacred breathwork. But I'm different from holotropic breathwork in that I like people to activate or bring in their guardian spirit, their daimon. I see the daimon or guardian spirit as the personification, it's a spiritual form of the holotropic principle. Holotropic is abstract. Your own daimon, you can vision it, you can see it, you can relate to it on your journey, that sort of thing. And also feel you are supported and protected in the breath work by it, not just the community around you. Yeah. But this is a very powerful ceremony. It can be so powerful that a few sessions can be life transforming. Usually you need about 10 or a couple years worth, if you do 4 or 5 a year, to see a big change in your life. But that's not that many ceremonies. And it's not as fast as, say, working with ayahuasca. But it's in that direction. It's getting close to that in terms of its power to transform you. And it's completely safe if you don't have certain medical conditions to do. And in our workshop in Italy, I think in Bosnia, I will be assisted by Mario Lorenzo and Eva Morales, both who have worked with me in the sacred breath work and in the shamanic area. And they are going to help. Mario is a holotropic breathwork master in Italy, and he is going to provide a lot of support in that ceremony. But the reason I do it has to do with the growing problems in the world. This is a big thing for me because we live in a time of global crisis. The whole world is in trouble. And so, anyway, I would say we live in a world, it has fear, hatred, fascism, violence. It's driven by greed and fear, this violence. There's wars everywhere. And never before in human history have we been in a race against time to save the world. But we don't have much time. We have to change the human animal. We have to become Homo sapiens, which means wise, the wise human. And we are not. We are not. And how do we do that? You see, in the breath work, in the holotropic breath work, in the sacred breath work, and some other breath work systems, it's understood that you have to face your own inner demons, your own inner fear, your own inner hatred, your own wounds and your pain. Face that, transform it. You have to die to your old way of being and be born into a new way of being in life. And the sacred breathwork can do that, just as ayahuasca ceremonies can do that. I'll let you translate. In the sacred breathwork, there's what they call birth perinatal matrices, which are stages of the birth process that medical doctors know about. BPMs, we call them, birth perinatal matrices. In the first stage, the little baby is floating in the ocean of its mother's fluids, and it's at peace with the cosmos if everything goes well. In the second phase, the chemistry of the womb changes, and it's unpleasant for the baby, and there's no way to exit. But in the third stage, this is most important for the global crisis, because it's a terrible experience to go through, and yet we all have to do it when we're born into the world. It's like warfare, struggle to survive, being pressured by the mother's contractions, trying to get to a little narrow passage. We feel like we're being torn apart. We may have emotions of hatred or rage. We may have terrifying fears. We maybe feel we're burned alive. It's just horrible. And in the fourth stage, we succeed in passing through. If we're fortunate, we survived. And we are now in paradise, like the Garden of Eden. It's beautiful when we can bond with the mother after all that struggle. But it's the third phase, BPM 3, that is the problem for humanity and the opportunity. Because of the infant's fear of death, because of its rage, because of its feeling like it has to fight for its life, all this gets projected out into the world during the course of our lives. We project our fear on so many things, but especially on other people who are different. And we're afraid of the earth, we're afraid of animals, we're afraid of insects, we're afraid of everything. And because of this, there's a direct connection between the global crisis and BPM-3. So we humans have a tendency towards violence against nature, violence against each other, rape, child abuse, war, ecological disaster. We're violent everywhere we go. And this has a direct connection to BPM-3, because BPM-3 is about a new birth. And we have the technology, the money, we can feed everybody on the planet, we can stop polluting the earth, but we don't do it. Politicians can't do it, technology can't save us, science can't save us, because they are rooted in the old ideologies of greed and violence that made the planet a disaster in the first place. We have to have a new point of view. So we need new strategies that come from a new human. And breathwork can help us do the dying and the rebirthing, because the spiritual transformation follows the same BPM or birth perinatal matrices. Whether you're doing sweat lodges, which is another good way if you do it a lot and well, or ayahuasca, or vision questing, there has to be a death of the old ways and a birth to the new, the fresh ways that leave us connected with life, leave us loving life, leave us caring for life, leave us unafraid to embrace and to love one another. So as I see it, the whole world, meaning Western civilization that's covering the world, is in a shamanic initiatory crisis, needing shamanic wisdom for guiding and supporting a death and rebirth of enough individuals personally, facing their demons and transforming, in order to create this human who's worthy of the name Homo sapiens, truly a wise human. And they can use wise strategies rooted in a new ideology of living from the heart in an earth-honoring way. One more thing I'll say about this topic is that political activism, fighting like environmentalists and fighting fascism, this is important, but it's like emergency room, going to the emergency room in a hospital to stop the destructive process that's happening at the moment. But the world will continue to generate these problems without the death and the rebirth. We need the new human. We need new strategies based on a true human being who's wise. And sacred breathwork is psycho-shamanic, because it brings the best of depth psychology and shamanism together to help us change. Jungian psychology alone is not enough, and the ancient shamanic way alone is not enough, because we live in a modern world. We need the two wedded together to make the transformation.
Ok, Mikkal, c'è qualcosa che vuoi augurare o qualcosa che vuoi dire alle persone che incontrerai in Italia al tuo seminario?
Oh, that's a hard one, because you know, I've been all around Italy, but I was in Rome once from the airport point of view, so I don't know by living there. Like for France, living and working there for 10 years, I know something about Francophone culture. But let me say, Italy has been a great inspiration to me, because of the Roman genius, the genius of your birth, and because of course, the arts and all that. But above all, it's Dante Alighieri. Dante. Okay? If you want to know what shamanism is, read and reread the Commedia, because there you have the three worlds. You have, for Dante, the guardian spirit, the daimon, it's Virgil and Beatrice. And Virgil shows, in the Inferno, gives a guided tour of hell, of BPM 3. That's what it is. All those forces that are destructive and destroy lives on the planet, they're there. But Dante does not do anything with them, maybe ask questions. He's getting familiar with his own unconscious life, what's in his heart that needs tending. But when he exits through the devil into the purgatorio, then he has to face each of the same forces there, but this time he has to liberate himself from each one. And as he does, gravity reverses, it gets lighter and lighter until finally he can make it to the heavenly realm, the paradiso. And from that point, he transitions to the paradiso. Beatrice is completely guiding him now. Virgil is gone, and she takes him right to the divine center at the heart of the universe. That love that turns the sun and those other stars. For me, I know Dante, he was inspired by Tuscan poets. I think he studied in Tuscany a while, and I believe the roots are very shamanic there. Anyway, this cosmology is pre-Christian, pre-Judaic, pre-Middle Eastern. It is Paleolithic. It's been around and it's all over the planet. You might say the divine has left its voice, its imprint everywhere. And so you have, more than any other European culture, this shamanic cosmos in your greatest poet. And I just can't wait to be there in that energy with you.
Grazie Mikkal, grazie davvero.
Thank you, Chris. Chris, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Alberto, thank you for this opportunity. And to all of our listeners here, thank you to Monica, thank you, Mario, Eva, and Amrita Edizioni.
Okay.
That's it.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice
Thank you.
day.
You too.